Welcome back to Chillporeal. I'm your host, Brian, the Nerdporeal Lifeform, and with me for the third time, I think, on Chillporeal, I got my friend Marty here. So, what's up, Marty? How you doing? Thanks for being here.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Always great to be back.
So, I figured I'd bring you on and talk about the book that you told me about, and I actually finally finished it. And let's talk about it. So, Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. So, how'd you come across this book, and what kind of book is this? I'll let you describe it.
So, last year, I actually read The Hellbound Heart for the first time, and that's Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, yeah.
And I read it on my Kindle. Kindle's kind of a new thing for me. I was always like a physical book purist. And Hellbound Heart, after I got done with it, it's like, check out more books like this. And Between Two Fires was on there. And then I read Fairy Tale. And after I read it, it said, check out these similar books. And it was Between Two Fires. And I read the synopsis. I'm like, I'm not a huge fantasy guy. And when I read it, I'm like, this just sounds like fantasy. And it really isn't. If it's fantasy, it's low fantasy. It's more like a Christian mythology book. But then I wanted, I felt like reading something spooky. I didn't want to read another Stephen King book. I mean, I love Stephen King, but I've read so much by him. And I just got done reading a Joe Hill collection of stories, 20th Century Horror, which is great. And I looked up, I typed in occult books because I wanted to read something occult. And that came up. I'm like, okay, this has been recommended to me like 3 times by the algorithm. So I picked it up and I enjoyed every moment of it. And I guess the book it's a period piece. It takes place in medieval Europe during the Black Death. And it's a story of a disgraced knight, a young girl, a disgraced priest, and their quest to assist this girl in kind of fulfilling some quest from God or some divine quest. And there's demons, angels, crazy people, corpses, zombies throughout the entire story. And I loved it. It felt like almost like a monster of the week when you're going through every single chapter. I'm like, every chapter there was like a new monster to deal with. So I love the variety. I love the redemption arc. I love the book.
Yeah, I mean so this is kind of like another, like you said, it's another adventure, and it's basically it's very grim dark. It's got a lot of, I felt a lot of Berserk, and I felt a lot of Game of Thrones. And some people have said Dark Souls.
Yeah, I think that I think it is dark, but I think it's funny too. The author is actually describes himself as a comedian, author, filmmaker. He hasn't done a ton, but I think, to me, the feeling of it reading this book seems like a love letter to a lot of different things, because it is like a story of a group on an adventure, not unlike Lord of the Rings, not unlike Dark Tower, and they're going on this quest. But what's awesome about the book is it's self-contained. It's not like you're signing on to read 15 books. It's got a beginning and end, and for me at least, it was very satisfying.
Yeah, so I mean, so the book starts off in Normandy, which is all the way north. Everybody should know this. You know, you learned about World War II and the landing at Omaha Beach and all the other beaches. But Avignon is not a place I knew about, and apparently Avignon is all the way down here, all the way down the south, almost southern tip of France, right by the Mediterranean. So it's a very long journey. About according to what I've read here in this article, about 2 months. So apparently and I didn't know this because my knowledge of the Catholic Church is very limited, I'll say. But apparently during the Black Death, during the 14th century, the papacy was based in Avignon. It wasn't
Yes. Yeah.
in Rome like it was because of some political issue that caused, like, the conclave uh, couldn't really decide a pope, so the king of France kind of stepped in. I'm not even sure if the Holy Roman, I actually know France, I don't think France was part of the Holy Roman Empire. I think that was mainly Germany and
Well,
Switzerland.
there was. Well, I think one thing to understand is there really wasn't such thing as France, or like Germany. It was more. It was there was a king of France, but it wasn't like a country as we think of it today. The Holy Roman Empire. By this time, it fell after Charlemagne. So
Mhm.
Charlemagne was at the close of the pretty much the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Charlemagne inherited that kind of, I guess that gusto. He was
Yeah.
the sequel to the Holy Roman Empire. But after Charlemagne died, his sons divided up the Holy Roman Empire, and it really wasn't anything. Um, and they even kind of describe, some of the Germans in this book, but the Holy Roman Empire was very important in the kind of uh, separation of the Western Christianity from Eastern Christianity. But by this time, the Holy Roman Empire wasn't really as big of a thing.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, I haven't learned a whole. I mean, I think in school we kind of skimmed over the Holy Roman Empire, so I really don't know much about it. It's something I need to kind of brush up on.
I
Um,
minored in history, so
yeah, so there you go. Um, so one thing I did was really impressed with this book was I liked how each part opened. So kind of want to read part one, or how this book actually begins. And it takes place, you're basically seeing what's going on in heaven and what's going on, with all the higher beings. And here's how this is how the Between Two Fires begins. Now in these days, the Lord God had turned his face from the business of men, and the angels who had remained loyal to him said to one another, "We must look after the children of Adam." And they did so as best they could. Now also the third part of the angels who had rebelled looked upon the earth and saw the hand of God withdrawn from it. And the air was cold in the valleys of men, and the sea was also cold. And one of the fallen angels, whose name was Uziel, said, "It was for man's sake that we were cast down, for we would not bend our knee to him. Let us test the Lord and see what he will do if we afflict their mightiest kingdoms with hunger." And this angel rose from the waters of the sea and made rain, and the spikes of wheat and the ears of barley were heavy with that rain, and they fell into the mud, or withered, or went to rot. And the livestock were made sick, and they died in great numbers. And in their turn, the children of Adam knew hunger, and men devoured all there was, and there was no more. And many died. And some would go into the dead yard and eat of the newly buried. And the babes born during those years who lived to be children had only 22 teeth. And the Lord made no answer. Now another of the fallen, whose name was Belial, said, "It was for man's sake that the war began in heaven. So let us try them with wars in their greatest kingdoms." And he rose through the wells of a king who ruled a mighty island, and blew pride into his mouth. And when this king spoke, he swore that he would have the crown of an even greater kingdom, which he would take with the sword. And so he came upon his neighbor's shore under arms and with banners. Now the greater king, seeing that his land was in peril, sent out a mighty host in armor of iron and silver, and they rode against the men of the island, who shot them with arrows, even through their armor, and they died. And so the long war began, and the Lord made no answer. So how much more of that? Okay. So it came that the first among the fallen, whose name was Lucifer, said, our old enemy sleeps. If we do not seize this hour, we will come to the end of days as he has written them, and he will grind us under his heel and destroy us forever. Let us rise against him now in all our numbers, and pull the walls of heaven down, and shake out the souls of the just, and let us seize our brother angels by the throat, and cast them down into hell, and let us live as once we did upon the great height. But some were fearful of the power of the angels of God, whose numbers were greater, and whose generals were Uriel and Gabriel and Michael, who had broken the back of Lucifer and sent him into the hot coals in the belly of the earth to blacken his face with soot. And no, he was lower than the Lord. And some were fearful that God would wake from his drowsiness and rack them with pains and fires, even though they had not learned to endure or destroy them utterly. And the first among the fallen spoke to them, saying, then let us test him one more time. It is for man's sake that we were insulted, for his sake that we were driven out, and for his peace that we were martyred under. Let us break the roof of hell with our fists and murder the seed of Adam. For if God will not rouse himself to save his favorite creature, his sleep is deep, and we may catch him by the hair and cast him down. And one of the fallen, whose name was Azael, said, shall we kill them with fire or with cold? And Lucifer spoke to him, saying, neither of these. What then? Said the wicked angel. With a great plague, answered Lucifer. And so it was. And the years that had passed since the Lord come to be born among men were 1,348. So this was what drew me in. This opening was just freaking balls awesome. Like sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think it covers a lot of what Christians and, quote, Catholics largely believe about demons, is that demons were once angels that were casted out by heaven, and that they were jealous of the power of God, but they were also jealous in God's love for humanity. And when they cast, and it's pretty much these demons want to get back at God. And so pretty much we look at a natural occurrence, a plague, and, we could explain it with, science and nature. We knew it was the bubonic plague, and we know that how that infection was transmitted, so on and so forth.
It was bacterial, if I remember correctly, right?
It is, yeah.
Now, did that originate in Asia? I know it was like transmitted through what was it? I mean,
rats and fleas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I mean, essentially the story is that the demons are creating all this, and they're trying to bring upon the apocalypse.
So I got a question for you. So the big part of this opening was that God made no answer. So God basically. So there's going to be spoilers. We're going to be talking spoilers for this book. So
big spoilers. I mean, I want to talk about the end, because I think the end is.
So the end is kind of what I'm trying to understand what God was trying to do. Was God trying to simply save two people by doing all this? Save Thomas and save Matthew, Father Matthew?
I don't know.
From their sins, basically.
I'm
assuming. I'm God. I mean, from my understanding, God. God is everywhere. God is all powerful. God is all knowing. So everything he does for. I mean, he even though it seems like he's not there, he is there.
Yeah.
So like, I'm curious. Like, the book didn't really. I mean, maybe. I mean, the thing about God is maybe take the Orthodox stance that like a lot of God's intentions are more mysterious
Mhm.
then maybe we don't understand. But I'm trying to understand if in this book, was there a reason that God, allowed this? Was this just to, once again, to glorify him, or was there
Yeah.
something?
I don't know, because I feel like, I mean, I think it's kind of a little bit of a plot hole, to be honest with you. And I think that we could think of a few different things. But I do think the way they're setting this up almost feels like The Preacher. If you're familiar with the Preacher comic book, and one was
Yeah.
made into a TV show, that God abandoned his post, that he abandoned his people. And by the end of the book, that isn't true. Um, and
Doesn't like
it
Preacher kind of mock the idea of going to kill God or something, like something
well,
stupid like that?
that's what the preacher wants to do. Yeah, he wants to
Yeah.
kill God. But
Yeah.
in this story, it's I feel like it wasn't that God left, mankind, but I think God, I mean, and we find out God went to Earth almost to kind of,
It was like a second coming. It was like,
yes. So
I mean, I don't
that's
know
the
if that was
idea.
supposed to be, I don't know if that was supposed to be, Armageddon, even though it
Well,
wasn't
I
Armageddon because it wasn't the end of the world.
so what I feel, well, but it could have been, and I think
Yeah.
what it was is that, and I think that in this story, God is not powerless, but God can't, just snap his fingers and control everything. That God is the creator, but his creations, the demons, act under free will. So the demons, and that, I mean, that's, if you look at like demon mythology, angels don't have free will, but demons do have free will. And that's one of the reasons they were cast out. And the demons were going to cause this apocalypse. And I feel like once you learn about what happens in this story, that God was there to prevent it. But, there was a very specific situation that had to happen, that it almost felt like God was either teaching man a lesson, because of their wicked ways. But in the end, you find that God was there with them the whole time. And I think that's part of it, and that's part of and I get, again, I think it's kind of a plot hole.
Yeah,
Um,
because I'm like, isn't the reason why the I mean, it's isn't it like the reason why all this is happening is because the fact that God kind of is just gone, and this is the demons, the fallen angels have basically used this as as an opportunity to go and wreak some havoc against God's favorite creature.
but
Um,
I think, yeah, but I think it's also that man has free will. So what
yeah,
is God going to do, right? So
yeah,
man has to do what they're going to do, and I think that in the end, God came down to influence two men's behavior to avoid the apocalypse. And I think that's what it was, is that God chose Thomas and Matthew and Delphine, because those were the three that were going to prevent the apocalypse. And I think that maybe the one way to settle the plot hole that God abandoned his post in your mind is that he was powerless to prevent this, or he didn't prevent it, for one reason or another. And now he has sent Delphine, Tomas, and Matthew to stop it.
yeah.
And
I thought the Delphine twist was interesting because not only was she so I'm not sure if she was supposed to be now it just said she was him, capital HIM, you see capital H, you're referring to Lord. um
yeah,
I wasn't sure if she was Jesus or if she was the entire Trinity, maybe if
yeah.
that
I mean,
doesn't
like
even.
when you think of Christianity, though, is that Jesus is God
Yes.
experiencing life as a human.
Yes.
So,
And so like
uh,
Delphine was also a girl, but she was also God at the same time. She had abilities that she didn't, which I thought was an interesting way to
yeah,
kind of put it. Like she was able to play an instrument, without knowing how she played an instrument. And
Oh yeah, and speaking languages she didn't know. But I think it's really like to really feel the weight of the author's decision. I think you have to kind of think of how the story starts. So the story starts where you have a disgraced knight Tomas running around with, some other disgraced knights just robbing people.
yeah,
And Tomas
brigands.
is, yeah, and Tomas is doing it to survive. He doesn't have anything else, but he has a moral code. And the two
And she,
brigands
yeah, and she
that
says you have. He tries to say I'm gonna be this and I'm that. And she's like, no, you're not. You're not that type of person.
and
And what I
yeah,
liked
she
about,
knows Tomas. She
yeah,
chose Tomas.
yes. And one thing I did like was that when she did, speak authoritatively, even though he's a much bigger person. Like when I think of him, I think of like a combination of the Hound from Game of Thrones and
Sandor Clegane was
Riker
yeah,
from Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like both big dudes who are like 6'5", really big
yeah,
and 300 or 200
yeah.
to 300 pounds, big dudes. And then you got
I
this little
picture
girl, and you got this
yeah.
little girl being authoritative and commanding, and he listens. He doesn't like he will be like you're just a girl, but then it gets to a point where he listens, and he does what she says,
But he
and
listens
that
to her as like the way I see it, and as Sandor Clegane is who I pictured as well, without the scar on his face.
yeah.
But
Well, he does
but
have I think he did have like something go through his cheek and his tongue or
yeah,
something like that. So
yeah, I didn't, but not the bald head.
no, no,
When she's kind of authoritative though, it's almost like when my daughter's telling me to do something. It's not like he's not looking at like, yes, boss, I'm sorry for stepping out of line. He's like, she's appealing to his better side,
yeah,
and she's appealing to the good in his heart, and she's not like commanding him in a way where like, if you don't do this you're gonna get it's just like this is what you have to be, Tomas. This is who you are. But I mean, what did you think, who did you think Delphine was when you were reading the book? I thought
well,
she was just
I
like
honestly
clairvoyant,
thought
or
she was. I mean, once I started noticing that she had these abilities and stuff, and that she didn't even sometimes she didn't even remember. I knew I had a feeling that she would be. Um, I was like, okay, where's God? Where would God be? And I was just
Mhm.
using just logic, and I was like, well, maybe God's in her and
Yeah,
everything. And apparently I was correct. But I liked how it was revealed. I
yeah,
liked how I really liked how she well, one thing that really got me, and one of the most compelling part of this book, was when what's funny was I was disappointed by the final battle. I thought the middle of the book, end of part 2, where we see, like you said, that they become like the angels, the fallen angels, and the regular angels become like these kaiju, and they start fighting each other,
mhm,
and the priest is trying to protect Delphine in the tree. And I thought that was terrifying. Like I thought,
mhm.
like that was such a freaking awesome, epic part of that book. And it was just like, I wanted more after that. And then the priest unfortunately gets killed by these heads that live in the Rhone River in France. And I was kind of, I mean, I like the fact that he got he gave his life, because he was going through
Mhm.
his own thing, because he had a gay experience with a boy or something like that in the
Yeah,
river, and he got caught. But then the Black Death happened, so nothing really. He didn't get anything. He didn't get like punished or anything by the church.
yeah.
But he wasn't like a bad guy. He just
No, no, he's a good guy.
he just gave into temptation. And I mean, he's no different from anybody else. And the Thomas,
Yeah.
keeps making fun of him, calls him a bugger throughout the entire book. But he gives his life for Delphine,
Mhm.
God. And one thing that I noticed, because we see Thomas or Tomas go into the afterlife, but we didn't really see him. He just died. So I'm assuming he went to paradise because of
You do see him. He comes to save his brother. He appears to his brother when his brother is dying, and like that end is very confusing. I had to reread it like 3 or 4 times. So I agree that it didn't feel really drawn out, but that angel, that kaiju angel, was a
yeah.
lower angel. In the last battle, Michael comes down. He's like, "It's time to rock and roll, motherfuckers," and he
So
just kills everybody. And the angels have the power to grab the demons and they kiss them and they turn back into angels. So they forgive them for their sins. So what's happening is all these demons are, because the demons were killing the angels and they were turning to demons, but then all the angels came down and they were grabbing the demons and kissing them and turning them back into angels. And again, I mean, Michael comes out and he starts kicking ass. He starts
yeah.
killing everybody, and it's so
So
quick. It's 30
so
seconds.
I didn't even really understand what was going on. Like, were they cast back into hell? Like, or like you said, were they kissed? Like, I wasn't really sure
No,
what was going on.
I think they were forgiven. I think their sins were absolved, and that they were taken back into God's arms. Um,
All of
and
them.
I
So it was, I mean, I'm assuming. I
not
know,
not the orchestrators, not the false pope,
but like the
not
low,
not
but you said
the lion.
the lower angels, not like your Beelzebub, your
No,
Beelzebub, or
yeah, Beelzebub. That's who it is.
yeah,
But it's 30 seconds because Tomas it gets up and he's running at I think it's Beelzebub. Is that who the Pope is? I forgot
yeah,
the bad Pope.
the
And he's
fake
running at,
Pope Clement the Sixth, basically.
yeah, so he's running at him with the spear that pierced Jesus,
Yeah,
and he's running at him, and he gets his arm chopped off, and then he picks the spear up with his other arm, and then he sees Delphine. He gets distracted. Delphine gets cut in half, and um,
yeah.
and he Tomas gets up. He tries stabbing Beelzebub. He fails, and then Michael kills them all, kills all the evil demons, and then
So
Tomas wakes up in hell.
So what happens to, and I don't think the book explained this, what happened to all those evil creatures that, so the fallen angels were basically bastardizing God's gift, which, life, by
Mhm.
creating all these monsters, like those heads that have tentacles and stingers that killed,
Yeah,
Father Matthew. And then you had the frog, you had the big giant frog creature that was terrorizing the people. I forget, it's the people in Normandy right by the river. I don't know if it was the
yeah, and
Seine River.
Matthew's home.
Matthew's home, and that fight made me think of Berserk, when he fights the Cobra Baron, the Baron Cobra, the Snake
Yeah,
Baron, basically. Um, so that was a brutal one. A lot of people died. A lot of people they came
yeah,
across died, except for one dude. One dude actually survived coming across them, and they
yeah.
managed to part ways. I think he was from Italy. They came across an Italian. The Italian
Oh
went
yeah,
back home to his wife.
yeah.
He left them before he could get killed.
And then
So
why? Yeah, because Delphine said, "Leave.
yeah.
You will die if you come with us. You will live if you leave." Um, but I think like that's the end of the book, right? Or one of the climax of the book.
So
But I think that
the
there's so much.
epilogue.
Yeah.
So the epilogue, I was like, maybe it's because I was at work and I wasn't really thinking.
Hmm.
But I didn't realize it, but I didn't, because it didn't really, it did it. I don't, the epilogue. I mean, there were hints, but I didn't really see the hints that this was years later, because it didn't say years later. This is, and
Oh,
it didn't even it didn't name drop. They just called the friar instead
yeah.
of Thomas. And I thought this
You
was the
knew
other
it was
friar
him.
that he got the thing from. So I was like, who are they
Oh,
talking about? and who's this daughter? I'm like, who are these characters? And then they said Lady Marguerite, and I was like, do I remember that name? I think that was supposed to be the hint, was the fact that he goes and visits this Lady Marguerite, and we find out that like he has his real son and his grandson are alive, and they don't know that he's their father. So that was a very
Marguerite
interesting.
knows.
Yeah, she knows. And I think he knows too. But he kind of moved on. He moved on from that, and he basically, so basically, even though Delphine was kind of half, she's back as just a girl. She's not, God anymore, I think.
Yeah,
And
so
she ends up back where they found her in Normandy, basically, and she has no memory. What's funny is no people. So to kind of make it make sense, nobody has any memory of what happened with the angels, except for Thomas. Not even the Pope. I don't even think the Pope has any memory, or maybe he does.
Does Thomas remember though? Because I think he remembers something happened and that Delphine was there, but I don't know if he remembers going to hell.
Yeah.
So I guess like, we jumped right to the end of the story, but the book is their adventure to get to the Pope, and on the way they have to get certain relics, and what they're prepping to is to kill demons. And they they form this little quartet, and they form this little group, and the three of them, as they're trying to get down south in France, demons are being sent to stop them. And they are being, you mentioned the river monster that Tomas fights. And then there's the instance where Tomas and Matthew are bewitched, and they go to a fake banquet that's like just in their minds. And
yeah, that was orchestrated by another demon. I forget the demon. And then they have a jousting thing, and then I don't remember, but it just kind of ended.
It's a tourney. It's a fake tourney.
Yeah, and then it just kind of vanished, and Delphine wouldn't go in the castle.
And Tomas realizes this is bullshit because he notices one of the kids, and it was like that was a dead kid he saw or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the then they get to the river. Matthew dies.
We forgot about Paris. So Paris with the statue. So with the statue of the Virgin Mary murder is basically going around terrorizing people in Paris. Mm-hmm. And one thing we learn is that they got the spear, the lance, the spear of Longinus from the Jewish merchant. We learn that there's quite a bit of anti-Semitism going on in the world of Europe during the Black Death, and Clement VI was known for making decrees saying Jews are not to be touched; they are still God's chosen people.
Yeah,
and the fake Pope played by Beelzebub. That if you don't know Beelzebub, he's the fly. And he basically undoes the decree that Clement VI was historically known for, and says you can go and do whatever you want to Jews and all that stuff.
Not only that, he also said, because the origin of the story, that's a conflict, that the Black Death is a conflict, but the other conflict is that France and England, or what would become France and England, are at war with each other. And Clement, he's like, we brokered a peace deal. There's going to be no more war between France and England. He's like, we're joining forces to wage war in the Holy Land and to kill the Muslims is pretty much what he says.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, maybe this guy isn't so good. And then he's like, he throws this huge banquet, this false Pope, and these women walk out naked. And and he's like, have your way with him, and everyone starts, having sex with in the middle of this dinner with these women, and you find out they're dead, they're not
Yeah.
alive.
Hmm.
And you know this because Tomas, when he leaves, there's maggots all over his leg where the woman backed up into him,
Yeah.
and 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 Delphine says those women were dead. They were not alive. And that's when you're like, holy shit, that's one of the more fucked up moments in the book. Um,
Yeah.
and and then, and then Delphine and Tomas, um, before that, they kind of part ways because Delphine's like, I'm going to do this myself. I don't want to hurt anybody else. Um, Tomas seemingly dies. So does his rival. He meets his rival in the field,
Hmm.
and they both died from arrows from the English. Delphine resurrects Tomas, and then Tomas turns into his rival, or he has his rival's likeness, which allows him to kind of get into this calling with the Pope. And that's essentially where they confront him. And it, it's it's a very tragic story for Tomas because um, every single thing, you know, Tomas is revealed to be a common born who it seems like his mother, well, he's like a bastard. And it
Yeah.
seems like his mother was probably or his father is probably the seigneur, or senior, or whatever the French word for that like leader of
Hmm.
the area is.
Yeah.
And but he's his bastard son. They never really openly say that, but that's kind of the feeling I got. And he got made a knight, and he got made noble,
Yeah.
and then he got all his land and property stolen from him, for somebody who, um, kind of, a Benedict Arnold who had sided with the English, and then the English waged war, and they gave away all his land and his family. Um, so Tomas, and he's injured. So Tomas, we meet Tomas when he's kind of at the lull of his life, and then Delphine enters, and they enter this big, conquest, or this big quest, that you don't know what the quest is, and Delphine doesn't know
We
really.
don't even know her name until like more than halfway through the
No.
book. So she's just referred to as the girl for the longest time. We know
Yeah.
Thomas's name. We know Father Matthew's name. Yeah, I mean, it's just there was a lot of temptation. Like there was a point where the Matthew was he I think one of the demons stuck his hand into his mouth and everything, and then there's of course like you said the Thomas was nearly taken control of and nearly did some bad stuff
Oh,
to.
when he was gonna rape Delphine, he
Hmm.
had the he
Yeah,
had the vision. He was like in a desert, and he was reaching through thorns to grab like a pear or
it was
water
like
or
a, it was
something.
like a sweet pear, and yeah, and he got himself out of it, so
Yeah, he fought it.
he fought it.
Um, but I think that the big idea of this book is there's this huge quest that these three set out on. Um, and then at the end, which we talked about, Tomas confronts the demon. He
So
gets killed.
I might have asked this already, but did all the monsters just disappear? Where'd they go? That was one thing
I
that wasn't
I
addressed.
would I would assume yes. I
I
would
mean,
assume that
you're dealing with
once,
God. God could
yeah.
just
Well, I would assume once the demons were destroyed, their creatures, their magic, their, was went away too.
was reversed.
I mean,
Okay, that makes
yeah, they
sense.
they never really go out and explain it, but I do feel like one of the most horrific depictions of hell, um,
I want to
was
read that
was
right
in this
now.
book.
Actually, I have it up right here. So
Okay.
this is Tomas in Hell, and this was crazy. Like I'm reading this like holy crap. He went from one torment to another, starting with bodily pain and going on to heartbreak. He was skinned and then made to drag his skin behind him, and then made to sew his skin back on himself with the dirt and the gravel it had picked up now under it. He was shredded slowly, crammed with thorns and made to eject them, crowned in with naked thongs and scalded, made to fight for cool water or a glimpse of sky. And when they saw that he liked fighting, they made him fight again and again for everything, for years, until even his rage was broken, and he wept and succumbed when confronted. He was murdered and betrayed by those he loved, and then made to murder and betray them, then desecrate them, cannibalize them, regurgitate them. Nothing was left out, no weakness was overlooked. For pride in his strength, he was made a plaything. For his carnality, he was rendered sexless. He was made to live each oath he'd spoken, no matter how ridiculous. Lapping Christ's wounds, drowned with Christ in shit, boiled in Mary's sour milk, sodomized by the cocks of the apostles, until he had been stripped of his capacity for laughter or even the capacity to disbelieve the outrageous. They took his humor from him, not because they themselves were humorless. They most certainly were not, but because it so offended them that man had been given this too. Hell was mutable and hard, banal and shocking, painful and numbing, burning and frozen, but mostly it was real. Hell was real.
Yeah,
bro, that's crazy shit.
I'm a Catholic, and I believe in hell, and I believe in heaven, and there's a few things that really disturb me about this depiction of hell. One is when he first entered it. He entered it as a child. They made him a child when he first went to hell. And
oh yeah, that's right. Who was that guy that he was talking to as a kid? He's like, "Can I stay with you?"
Another person that was damned. So the demons that do the torturing are the damned. They are forced to torture others. And him as a little boy, I mean, and I kept on picturing my son, where just asking the demon, like, can we just stay here? Are we going to be okay? And he's like, I can't do that. He's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to. And he eats them. and they say that he did it 1,000 times. And then it describes the passage that you just described, where Tomas was tortured, but he lived lifetimes of him murdering those that he loved, being murdered by those he loved, every physical torture you can imagine. But him just this hugely tragic story. And then eventually it all ends where Delphine comes down with the archangel, and she's like, Thomas, do you remember me? And he doesn't know who she is. But then he's like, that's when it's revealed she was him.
With a capital H.
Delphine was God.
Yes.
And God was in Delphine. And she saves him from hell. And that's the end of the book before the epilogue. And I think that the one of the most fucked up parts is that Tomas wakes up 5 minutes after he died. So he experienced those hundreds of lifetimes in hell over the course of 5 minutes. So the notion of the permanence, and that there's no time here. And he was in hell for 5 minutes, but it felt like thousands of years.
It's like freaking it's like in Star Trek Next Generation when Picard gets hit by that probe, and he lives an entire lifetime in the course of he has a family, gets married, has kids, and then has to witness his kids and his entire civilization die. It makes me think of that, the inner light. So I have it right here actually. I want to actually read this. This was a great moment. How's it go? He spat. All right. He spat in her face and she smiled. So he says the mean thing to her. He's like, I see through you. I don't know if it's him talking or
he doesn't believe it. He believes that this is just part of hell. That it's not real.
He says, I understand. Go away. Not without you, Thomas. What'd you call me? Your name. Would you like to hear it again? I'm not falling for it. I'll wait. And then it says, her pale skin, his wings smoking like paper about to catch. Lucifer is fallen. Mammon is Lord here now. At last she saw a kernel of trust into Thomas's eyes. Are you ready? He nodded. Barely perceptibly, but he nodded. She blew into his hands to warm them back to life. She kissed his feet. She kissed his forehead. She smelled of cedar and of the sea. You're him. There is no him or her. Why did you not come as I would know you? I came as you would follow me. I came as you would love me in innocence. Why me? That question has never been answered to anyone's satisfaction, but you were the last one I could still save. And yet this is hell. I'm here. Not for long. I'm damned. Not anymore.
Yeah. So God chose Tomas to end, to prevent the apocalypse.
So that basically answers my initial question that I had in the beginning was, why did God do this? Why did God vanish, or so to speak, or allow the fallen angels to wreak havoc on earth? And apparently that was the answer. So
yeah. And from like a Christian point of view, this isn't a Christian podcast, right? But I've
talked Catholicism with other people. So yeah.
So there's this view in Catholicism that you have this individualistic relationship with God. You're one person out of many, but you have this individualistic relationship with God. He doesn't see us as people, he sees us as individuals. And I felt like that moment really highlighted that. And that, Tomas was someone God could save. So he chose to, and he needed Tomas or Thomas. He needed him to, prevent this apocalypse or stop this apocalypse. But, I don't know. I think it's a wonderful story. I think it's super exciting. It's, for me, I get locked into these, 1,200, 800 page books where, they're super long commitments. This book isn't that long. It's not a novella. It's a full-length novel, but it's a extremely epic story that is just one book. And for that reason, I really encourage people to read it. I encouraged you to read it because it blends it blends history, low fantasy, just dark fantasy, just violence. It's super cool. And it's awesome. And I cannot believe it hasn't been made into a film or a TV series.
I'm worried it would not be adapted proper, but that's just me.
That'd be a fear of mine. We'll see if Dark Tower turns into anything again. What's the name of the guy that has the rights to it now?
I don't even remember, honestly.
It's the guy from Haunting of Hill House. What's that dude's name? Michael Flannery. Is that his name?
Michael Flannery?
He did here, I'll figure it out real quick. I'm looking it up on my phone. He did like Haunting of Bly Manor, and all those. Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan.
So Mike Flanagan has the rights to make. He doesn't have like the ownership rights. I don't know what it really is, but he is the person who's going to try to make Dark Tower a thing. And he's a huge King fan. So, but this is a great book because it has my favorite theme in any story is redemption. And not redemption of like an evil person, but redemption of like a guy or a person or a woman who had something horrible happen to them, and they turned to the dark side, and then they're brought back to the good side. Like, for example, I'm a real big Dark Tower fan, like Eddie Dean. Eddie Dean was this scumbag heroin addict, and then he's redeemed, or like Larry Underwood in The Stand,
Yeah.
or Danny Torrance in Doctor Sleep. Just I love when these people come back to the good side, and that's and that's one of the things I love the most about this story. I can't believe more people don't talk about it. It's got great reviews, but I mean, you're the only other person I know who has read it. I don't know anyone else who's read the book.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not as detailed as other books I've read,
Mhm.
especially Wheel of Time, for instance. I'm so used to the dumping of detail
Yeah.
onto the readers. So this was, and the thing is, Robert Jordan does, like, he covers all of his bases when it comes to
Mhm.
like explaining what's going on and stuff. Um, so I think that was one thing that, and I mean, that was a little disappointing, a little a
Yeah, there's
little
there's plot holes.
so I mean, I liked the story. I liked where the characters went. Ultimately, I mean, I was literally shedding tears for Father Matthew. I shed tears Thomas. I was like, holy crap, are they dead? Like, is he going to stay dead or something? I wasn't sure. And then she dies. I was like, okay, something's got to give, because they can't all
Yeah.
die. They can't all die.
I thought it was extremely compelling. I thought it was extremely compelling that the last thing that you read. I thought that was the most emotional part for me. Was um, when God spoke to Thomas, or when God revealed Himself and
Yeah.
spoke to Thomas.
So much more time you got. So yeah, so if everybody
A
check
few more
out
minutes.
Between Two Fires. All right, so you got a few minutes. So I wanted to show you. So this is my friend's stream that I was watching yesterday. So you recognize this? This is the palace from Link to the Past. So they did bring the palace back. It's just not the
Mhm.
same. You go inside, it's just not the same palace. So
So it's the world from Link to the Past.
not quite, not quite. It has elements of the world from Link to the Past, but it doesn't seem like it is.
Okay.
So, like,
So is it the world's bigger though, right? It's
yes,
large. Okay.
yes, it's much bigger. Let me show you.
Magnolia's here with marker and chocolate all over her face.
Hi,
Say hi.
hi. She's shy.
Yeah. So my thing with this game, I am going to get it. But I'm not as excited about it, and I don't label me as some like some angry nerd who thinks there shouldn't be women in a video game. That's not my point. I just I think that I wish they just gave Zelda a sword that she can use all the time and that it didn't run out of energy. Um, I mean, for me, and we were talking about this right before we started today, like Zelda is a series I love. And I think that the format of Zelda worked so well for me. Um, that when there were huge deviations from the way that the story would be told or played, some of them were cool, but most of them I'm like, yeah, but this isn't Zelda. So like Breath of the Wild, I mean, we've talked about it before. Like, I don't hate Breath of the Wild. I don't. It does not rank for me. It is, Breath of the Wild is probably, in terms of 3D Zelda, probably my least favorite. Um, but I would say, and I actually might like it more than Majora's Mask. I think Majora's Mask. People are just trying to be contrarian when they say that's their favorite one. Um, but
Well, it's a lot
I
of
think
people. It's a lot of people my brother's age that like that. They grew up with that game. I mean,
what Majora's
I
Mask.
Majora's Mask, yeah, because it was
Yeah,
just weird and different and dark, I
yeah.
guess. I mean, I
Well,
don't
and
know.
again,
I didn't like
I,
I didn't like the whole idea of resetting time. And a lot of people, I don't have a problem with that. I didn't like the time limit. I didn't like the resetting time. And then, you know, when you reset time, there were things that you had to do over again, basically. And I just thought that
yeah,
was
yeah.
I don't know.
It's
I just it did the game wasn't nearly as replayable. I still haven't completely beaten it on. I have the 3DS version. I still haven't beaten that yet.
mhm.
So
I mean, that's the best way to play it for sure. But when Breath of the Wild came out, that was a disappointment. I will say I thoroughly enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom. I do think that there were super epic moments in Tears of the Kingdom. Some of the most epic moments, but in terms of 3D Zelda, for
I
me,
just I
I'm a
just don't want
Ocarina of
I
Time and
just don't want to.
Twilight Princess person.
Yeah, I just don't want to put I just don't want to put like 500 to 1,000 hours into Tears of the Kingdom. That's why
Yeah,
I'm not.
I
That's
think
why I haven't
I think
played
what's
much of it because I gave it a shot. I put in a good 30 to 40 hours into it, and I barely scratched the surface. I'm like, I don't have time to do
Mhm.
this. I don't
I
have time
think
to play all this.
I did all the shrines. Um, and I think it took me 83 hours. Um, and but I like the game, but still the thing that is missing for me, it's not even the like the dungeon items. For me, the thing that's missing is dungeons. It's the
Yeah,
keys, the thematic dungeons, and I, you know, I just see games like, and I know you're not a huge fan of it, but I see games like Elden Ring, where you have like these kind of complex, you know, just like castles that certain areas unlock and open and paths cross. I'm like, Nintendo could do this better. They could do a better job at this, but they're not, and it's hard. It's hard to make a video game.
oh yeah, it's
But
a lot of work. I mean, the games now take 4 to 5 years to develop to make.
I do think I do love the engine. I love the gameplay. I just I like thematic dungeons. That's because that's what really, when I was a kid and I played through Ocarina of Time, that's the thing I loved. I loved those thematic dungeons. And when they were missing, like completely missing from Breath of the Wild, that was a disappointment. And then
I'm
when they were kind of missing from Tears of the Kingdom, that was disappointing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this. It looks like there are going to be, like, I'm just happy the fact that you can explore underwater and go into underwater places right now because we
Yeah.
haven't really seen anything like this since Twilight Princess. And that's the
No.
one thing I loved about Ocarina was that you had the iron boots and that you could go underwater and explore and all that. But yeah, I'm totally with you. Like, but this game seems to be there's rooms, there's keys, there's bosses, and there's little Magnolia talking, right?
Yeah. What well, right now what I'm playing, and I'm gonna get this, but I'm actually playing through Bloodborne for the first time.
Oh, really? All right. I've been like one of my friends here. He's been wanting a remaster of Bloodborne, and he was hoping that the Sony State of Play
Yeah,
would announce it, but they didn't. They actually announced a new Ghost of Tsushima game, but they call it as
yeah,
Ghost of. I can't
yeah, I
remember. I
saw
never
that.
remember the name. It
Some
looks
other
good.
phrase.
I was just hoping to be a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima because I don't know if you've played that one, but that game ends. Uh, it doesn't really end on a definitive note.
Yeah.
Like
I
I was expecting, you know how Red Dead Redemption ends on a
mhm,
definitive note, especially with regards to what
yeah,
happens to its characters, its main characters. You know, that
yeah,
didn't happen
which
in Ghost of
still
Tsushima.
pisses me off.
Yeah,
It still pisses me off what they did to John Marston, and I think that actually screws up the it kind of screws up Red Dead Redemption 2, the narrative a little bit. But yeah, so it's more like a GTA thing, where it's a different story, different cast of characters. Um, am I right in that assumption?
something like that. Yeah, I mean,
I
one
think
thing it ends you end up it ends like you have to make a choice on what to do. So you fight somebody, and you have the choice of whether to spare them or to kill them. And both either way, your character is screwed, and he's basically hunted by not only the villains, because there's, I mean, the Mongols are the main villains in this game. They're trying to take over Japan. Well, not only the Mongols are bad, but you're the side that you're on, you're Japanese. The Japanese are after him too. I won't say why, but let's just say it has something to do with, Bushido, and when you're in war, you might have to resort to tactics that are against Bushido, against honor, Japanese honor, basically. And let's just say that was very compelling in that game. And either choice, like there's more story to tell. Like you're like, he's going to be hunted for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, I think
this new one takes place. This new one, that just came out, that just got announced. It takes place during the same time that the show Shogun takes place in 1600, when the Tokugawa shogunate starts to take power.
Yeah, I mean, they thought that there wasn't enough of a story to tell there for a full length game with the next one. But Bloodborne, I do think they will remaster Bloodborne. I think the studio that remastered Demon Souls will probably end up remastering Bloodborne. But the reason I got it was it's free. It's free on PlayStation Plus. So,
I just got PlayStation Plus myself. That's how I've been playing Elden Ring.
So I decided like, what the heck? Like, I have not played any PlayStation 5 exclusives on my PS5. Resident Evil 4 remake, is that on PS4 too?
I think it's on PS5. I still have you played it? I have not played it yet.
I have. It's fantastic.
Okay.
But Bloodborne is really good. It's like Dark Souls. That's what it feels like. But back to kind of like Zelda, where Zelda is, they spent so much time developing this overworld, which is cool. I mean, it's cool to see the caves and stuff like that, but they can do so much more. What I'm really curious, and like after Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I could take a Zelda break. It's my favorite series, for sure. But I'm more curious on what's going on with Mario. It's obviously going to be a launch title for
the next Nintendo system.
Switch. And I am super intrigued because they only had one on Switch. So what have they been doing? What has that team been doing? And I think it's going to be something remarkable.
I think I'm curious what it's going to be too. I still am under the impression it's going to be open world, but we'll have to.
I think it's going to be too. Well, I mean, open world-ish. I just think that there's not going to be a hub world. So I think it's going to be like you can travel from one area to the next area. I mean, but wouldn't that be cool? I mean, we all have kind of this open world fatigue, at least I do. But wouldn't that be cool, that to be like you're in the Mushroom Kingdom, like you explore the Mushroom Kingdom, and to have almost like, not that I'm a big fan of the shrines, but like, what if like they had like shrine like areas where you completed like a 2D level in these shrines or something like that. I think that they can do a lot of huge, great things with Mario that they haven't yet. And I'm looking forward to it. I loved Wonder, and I felt Wonder was such a great evolution of the 2D Mario, that I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with 3D Mario. I'm also
I haven't finished that. I haven't finished that one. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Like I don't know if it's good. I didn't like it. I don't know what it is. I played a little bit of it and I just stopped. I guess I wasn't interested. I don't know.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then we also have to wonder what's going on with Donkey Kong.
Well, I mean, they're coming out with another remaster for the Switch, and I
Yeah,
think it's
don't
gonna be
even.
January or February. So
It's a full
yeah,
price game.
yeah,
That's insane.
that sounds
That's
about right.
insane.
Yeah.
That is insane.
So I mean, and this is the second time it got released. It got released on the 3DS. First got on the Wii, then the 3DS, and then that.
Yeah,
So
this is the 3DS version.
we'll have to wait and see what they're gonna do with Donkey Kong, because I don't know. It's been 10 years since it's been over 10 years since Tropical Freeze came out. So
Yeah, it came out in 2014, right?
yeah, and it was announced back in 2013 for E3. It was like one of the Wii U's earliest titles. So, but yeah, so we are already over past an hour. So thanks, Marty. Thanks for joining me. Is there anything you're doing that you want to share, or
Yeah, I'm playing Bloodborne. I'm starting to read more short stories. Like I said, I read some of those Joe Hill short stories, and now I'm reading some Stephen King. Everything is Eventual, um, which I have never read. So I'm trying to kind of do some more novellas. Um, but in terms of my kind of media, I'm not watching any TV shows. There's nothing that's intriguing to me on TV.
I just started
Um,
watching. I don't know if you've seen it, but I think you would approve. I started watching Deadwood on HBO. Have you seen
yeah,
Deadwood?
no, I haven't. I haven't seen it.
I'm 5 episodes and it's really good.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the best westerns I've ever seen.
Well, I'll have to check it out. I hate the uh the new Game of Thrones show.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
like it either.
I mean, I hate it. It almost makes me hate George R. R. Martin. To be honest with you.
A lot of
Um,
people. You're not alone. You're not alone there.
I just, dude, I just don't get it. Like, what is so intriguing about writing about, you know, just incest? Like,
Yeah.
what is with the incest? What is with
And
it? Like,
wasn't
I don't.
there there was an incest relationship in Elden Ring that was
So yeah,
from
well,
George R. R. Martin too?
well, so so the final boss is Promise Consort Radon. So it's Mikola and Radon are in a romantic relationship, and you gotta know there's only one person who wrote that storyline,
Only one.
and
Yep, only
that
one.
was GRRM.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, the guy's never going to finish Wins a Winner, let alone his
no,
series. So I don't
no.
know. But yeah, Salty Traveling Sea, 99 cent super sticker. Thank you so much. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for dropping by. So yeah, we're you came right on the edge of us closing the stream here. So
All right, Blue. Well, I'll talk to you later, man.
all right, everybody. Uh, Definitely check out the previous streams that I've done. Chillporeal. If you're new here, or if you're you're catching the replay, best way to help the channel is to become a member, or to leave a super sticker, or a super thanks, or a super chat, whatever you want. That way, money goes back into the channel, because I mean, editing costs. Editing, I have a subscription for, and StreamYard, which I'm using right now to do these streams, is part of a subscription too. So this goes towards stuff. I wouldn't just do that, but that would be a great way to help the channel. And Marty,
It goes to his
being a friend.
addiction to it goes to his addiction to women, brown liquor, and hard drugs. That's what that super sticker went to.
Brown
So
liquor.
I
Yeah,
hope you're happy for supporting Brian's addictions.
yeah. You got me smoking a cigar on New Year's. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So all right, guys. All right, everybody. Cheers, and have a good night.
All right. Bye, guys.